So when I make my rankings, there is quite a few things that I take into consideration. One of them being whether or not a player is part of a top 10 offense. And the reason being for this is because if a player is part of a top 10 offense, chances are they're going to have more opportunities to score, which means more fantasy points compared to if they were part of a really bad offense. It's not the end all be all thing I look at, but it is one thing I factor in for sure. So today I'm going to be talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I firmly believe are capable as finishing as a top 10 offense this year. So if we look at the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, he finished as the QB8 last year in PPR formats. He is currently ranked as a QB8 according to Fantasy Pros. I think this is a fair ranking for him. I can easily see him finishing as the QB8 again this year. I can see him finishing a little bit higher if he does play really well and takes another step forward, but I think QB8 is a fair ranking for him. If you look at the receivers, Calvin Ridley is the biggest addition to this team by far. The last full season he played back in 2020, he finished as the wide receiver 5 in PPR formats. He was just lights out, and that was with Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. No, nothing against Matty Ice. I do think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a way better quarterback for him on this team. So right now, Fantasy Pros, they have Calvin Ridley ranked as their wide receiver 20, which I think is so low for this guy. I can easily see him finishing in the top 10 receivers this year. In my rankings, he is ranked as my wide receiver 9, and I'm super happy as drafting him in the middle rounds and getting an absolute steal for what he can give me. So if you look at the second receiver in line, Christian Kirk, he quietly finished as the wide receiver 12 last year. Right now, he's currently ranked as the wide receiver 28 according to Fantasy Pros, which I also think is so low for him. Like finishing as a 12 last year and now he's 28. Like he's still young. He's part of a good team. I can easily see him finishing in the top 20. Last year, if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins, Tua was able to support two top 10 receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And Jalen Hurts was able to support two top 10 receivers as well in Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Now, I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is going to support two top 10 receivers this year. I can easily see him supporting one top 10 in Calvin Ridley and one top 20 in Christian Kirk. Both these guys I think are too low, and I think they both can be league winners for you if you draft them. The one receiver who I do think does see some regression, unfortunately, is Zay Jones. So I do think just with the addition of Ridley, he's going to eat a lot of targets, and I think a lot of those targets are going to end up coming from Zay Jones and Marvin Jones from last year. Let's look at the running back situation. So last year, Travis Etienne, he finished as the RB17. This year, I have him ranked as my RB16. I'm happy as having him as my RB2 just because I think there's going to be lots of opportunities for him. I do think Tank Bigsby does get some work as well, but I do think Travis Etienne will be the main guy there. So like I said, I'm happy as having him as my RB2. I'm definitely not happy as having him as my RB1. Much prefer having him as my RB2. If you look at the tight end situation, I do think Evan Ingram will be relevant again this year. Last year he finished as a tight end 5, but I think he is going to see some regression just with the addition of Ridley as well. Right now Fantasy Pros has him ranked as the tight end 9. I could easily see him finishing anywhere in between 5 and 9, and I'm happy as having him as a mid-range tight end. So just to recap, I think this team can be a top 10 offense for sure. And the cool thing about this team is all these guys I mentioned you can get in the middle rounds. Like I think they're so cheap for what they can give you. If you can somehow manage to stack a Trevor Lawrence and a Calvin Ridley with two of your middle round picks while loading up in your first couple rounds, like I think that's just gross if you can do that. Like that's just disgusting. I think, man, that'd be fun. Even if you can get one of these guys, like I'm happy as having T. Law as my starting quarterback in redraft leagues. I'm happy as having Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 2. I'm happy as having Christian Kirk as my wide receiver 3 or flex. Travis Etienne, I'm happy as having as my RB2. And Evan Ingram, I'd be happy as having him as my starting tight end. And like all these guys, I think you can get for pretty cheap in your draft. So draft Jacksonville Jaguars this year. So if you like this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have anything else to add or have anything to say, feel free to leave a comment down below. I would love to discuss that with you. And as always, I will see you in the next video. T-Law.